Okay, so I'm the one who stands between cricket and dinner and drinks. Oh, sorry, drinks rather. So, okay, so I'm going to talk about the Aerospike Observability stack. I'm sure if you've used Aerospike, you've used some parts of this stack. So the idea today is to talk about what we've done in the last few months from an observability perspective, and also show you some of these things in action, right? So that's the idea here. Okay, so just to set the stage, the Aerospike Observability stack is based on Prometheus and Grafana. So on every node of the cluster, you will have an exporter running, the Aerospike Prometheus exporter, which will export metrics to Prometheus, and then you'll have Grafana to visualize those metrics using dashboards. What you also have is an integration with Alert Manager, so that any anomalies in these metrics can be sent to Alert Manager and to endpoints like Slack or PagerDuty, or Teams for that matter, right? So that's the observability stack that we operate with. So if you've worked with Aerospike, I'm sure you've used this stack quite a bit, right? Now what we're doing is we are making this a lot more comprehensive in terms of the metrics that you need to monitor, and also in terms of the dashboards and the alerts that are available to you, right? So we are adding to this list of dashboards and metrics. And we'll look at some of this during the demo as well. Now the whole idea is to be able to give you as much granularity as possible while you're diagnosing issues in production, right? So that's the whole idea. Now, a lot of you would have seen the metrics reference. How many of you have seen the metrics reference that Aerospike has? Not a lot of you? Okay. All right, so if you haven't seen the metrics reference, this is a great starting point to understand what metrics we offer, right? This is a great place to look at what a metric means, what is it used for, how is it derived, and what do you need to monitor, right? So there's more than 400 of these metrics, all of them documented in our metrics reference. So let me switch very quickly to that. So if you go to our documentation, you'll see something like this, which is the metrics reference. And then you can search for any metric and understand what's going on with that metric. Oh, sorry. Okay, so search for it, and then you'll get to see what that metric is all about. So this is also showing you which version was this metric introduced in, which Aerospike version, whether this is an instantaneous or a cumulative metric, and so on. Now, in addition to these metrics, we have also introduced a number of dashboards which are focused on providing you the right metrics for a given use case. In addition to these dashboards, there's also a lot of alerts that are available, right? These alerts help you to react to situations that might arise in production. Now, when we design these dashboards, we try to think about what an operations engineer who's dealing with Aerospike might go through in their day-to-day jobs. And so we talk about these jobs to be done dashboards. The whole idea is, okay, I might have to do X, Y, and Z in production to diagnose an issue. Can a dashboard help me in that respect, right? Now, so this list of use case dashboards, I don't know if you can see this, is basically things like you've got cross data center replication going. So I want to see what are the metrics for cross data center replication. You've got something like, let's say, multi-clusters, multiple clusters. So you might have to look at multiple clusters in one view, and so on and so forth, right? So there is a lot of these use case dashboards that we are introducing. So with this, let me jump very quickly to an example of such a use case dashboard. So this is one of the new ones that we introduced in the last few months. This is the multi-cluster view. I don't know how many of you have seen this. So here you will see a map of all the different clusters that are there in your estate. So in this case, of course, there's 2 of these clusters, one in North America and one in the EU. And then you get to see some high-level metrics for each of these clusters. So this is the first cluster with 3 nodes. The second cluster is also 3 nodes. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is, let me switch screens here. Okay, so I'm going to introduce an error condition which should pop up as an alert in the dashboard when I refresh. Let me just expand this a little bit. So this should come up pretty soon. So once this gets reflected here, you should see this go red. Let me just make sure. I had not given the password, of course. So now let's see. Okay, so you now start to see this alert, and then you can click on this alert to see more details about this particular alert. Okay, so here in this particular case, there is a particular set or a table in Aerospike which has breached its quota. So you can assign a set level quota saying, I'm not going to allow more than X amount of data to be stored in a given set, right? And that's how you can control how much usage there is for a given set. So think of this as a sort of multi-tenancy, right? Where you can say this set is going to have this much of quota. So I introduced that error condition, and that popped up an alert here. So now if I go back and reset that alert condition, okay, so now I should see this alert disappear. So it goes back to, if I refresh again, it should go back to green. So eventually it will go back to green, and the alert will resolve as well. Okay. So that's one example of a dashboard that we're talking about, a curated dashboard, right? The other thing that we're doing is also we are doing a lot of integration between not only the UI that you just saw, but also our command line tools. So if you look at our command line tools like ASADM, for instance, you can view that same information through our command line tools that you've just seen in the dashboard. So this is an example where you're seeing that stop writes being shown in the bottom if you see the yellow. That's the same condition that I triggered through the other demo that I showed you, right? So you can see the same information as an administrator through an interface like this. The next thing that we've done is, how many of you have seen an Aerospike configuration file? 1, 2, quite a few of you, okay. So if you looked at an Aerospike configuration file, you know it looks like JSON, right? It's not exactly JSON. And you have to do the configuration in the right way to get that to work, right? Now, if you look at our Kubernetes operator, that uses a YAML format, right? So that YAML format looks a little like what you're seeing on the screen here, but I'm also going to switch screens to my Visual Studio Code here. So it looks like this, right? Now, what we are doing is we are integrating some of this with IDEs like Visual Studio Code, right? So you can say, for instance, OK, I'm going to add a security tag to my cluster so that it enables it for authentication, right? So if you just type in SEC, it then prompts you. These prompts have now been integrated into the IDE environment. And then I hit Enter. It also gives me what are the different options within the security tag, right? So I'm able to now take this YAML file. So if I save this YAML file, I now have a new tool. So let me switch to that. Let's go up a little bit. Called ASConfig, where I can take this YAML file and convert it into a conf file, right? So that same YAML file, I just specify that I'm going to use the 6.4.0 version of the database, and then it converts it into this conf file. And then this is your familiar aerospike.conf file. Okay? So that's the usual aerospike.conf. Now, you can also take two of these configuration files and look at the differences between the two, right? Oftentimes, it's hard to compare the two files. So you can do a diff between the two files and see what's different. So we talked about these dashboards that we are working on, the curated dashboards supporting different use cases. You can extend these dashboards as well using your own set of panels and dashboards, right? The ones that we provide are, of course, supported. So any issues that you see in these dashboards, you can report it to our support team. In addition to this, what we are also doing is open telemetry support. So what does that mean? That means that these Aerospike metrics that are being generated can now be visualized in tools like New Relic or Splunk, Datadog, AWS CloudWatch, and so on. So you can visualize the metrics, the Aerospike metrics in those third-party tools as well, right? So all you really need to do is provide the API key, for instance, if you're using a SaaS provider monitoring stack. If you're using AWS CloudWatch, you provide the usual AWS access keys, and you should be good to go. So these are some of the stacks that look at open telemetry. There's additional ones as well. So just to give you an example, here's an example of AWS CloudWatch dashboard that's showing you metrics from Aerospike on AWS CloudWatch itself, right? So the reason why this is interesting for a lot of customers is because they have a monitoring stack in place for their applications, and they want to use something similar for their database as well. So that's where this becomes very interesting for them. So that's pretty much what I had, short, and hopefully this was giving you some idea of what we've done from an observability perspective. Effectively, we've looked at multiple dashboards, making it more comprehensive with more metrics. And we've looked at adding more support for open telemetry and open metrics. Okay? So that's what I had. Now just open up for questions.
In Grafana, or it is already also published in Datadog as well?
So the dashboards are Grafana dashboards right now.
Yeah, so any plan for publishing onto DataGuard?
I haven't heard of that plan. I don't know if you guys are aware of a plan to do Datadog dashboards, but I haven't heard of that plan at least. Yeah. So the dashboarding layer is something that you would create on top of the metrics that are being available in Datalog.
So do we need to have a separate exporter for, let's say, New Relic or anything installed on these servers, or we use the same Prometheus exporter?
It's the same Prometheus exporter. What you need is an open telemetry collector, which takes these metrics and then pushes it to the New Relic endpoint.
Okay. Additionally, one more question. So you support, I believe, PagerDuty alerts?
Yes.
Do you have anything else? Do you have plans of, let's say, Zen Duty?
So, go ahead.
It's just alert manager. Right? Alert manager comes with a bunch of integrations.
Yeah.
So that's a separate project we integrate.
Oh, okay.
So,
But you don't have any integration plan with any other product other than PagerDuty?
Well, like Debarun said, we plan on doing open telemetry, which
Okay.
is becoming a standard, so we don't have to do a tight integration of every single person.
Okay. All right.
yeah, Ronan,
Open telemetry is our way of being lazy. So we're going to do open telemetry, and then since everybody's kind of standardizing, that'll allow us. It doesn't give us dashboarding. We assume they do their own dashboards, right? But the idea of exporting, now Prometheus, like Debarun said, is a standard de facto. Most of our customers use this anyway. And then there's open telemetry, which kind of like reaches everything. So that's why one of them is for legacy reasons and still the fact that a lot of people use it. The other one is looking forward to, for us to efficiently be able to address a lot of integrations, because we're not a 10,000 person company where we can have teams that do every single thing out
Makes
there.
sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? No?
So one important thing in observability is correlation. Okay, so I think you provided the dashboard more from a Aerospike perspective, but ultimately if you want to look from a landscape of application, I think it should correlate.
Absolutely.
Do you have that capability of integrating that? So I'm talking about right away from, okay, implementing at the application level, okay, as a code. Are you thinking from that perspective?
So our focus on observability is, like you very rightly said, is on from a database perspective. And like you also very rightly said, correlation is a big part of observability. So if I have a transaction that flows through the application and you have to track where it went and how it went, that's not something that our stack provides out of the box, but it's something that can be instrumented, right? So the application stack and the database stack coming together is through an instrumentation platform, and OpenTelemetry would help with that, right? So that integration that we're doing right now would help you to marry the two environments and see what is the correlation between something happening at the app layer and something happening at the database layer, right? Any other questions? I think that's
So we are talking about like observability, right? So let's say any alert comes, right? Is there any auto heal kind of system present which can act on the alert and resolve the issues? Like I'm trying to go one step ahead.
Sure. So it depends on what the problem is. So let's say, it also depends on how you define what the alert does, right? So let's say you have a node going down in the cluster.
Yes.
Right? Now, in that case, yes, it's a problem that the node went down. Is it a problem for the cluster? May not be a problem, right? Because the cluster will operate as if nothing happened, right? So in a way, the node going down is an issue, but
No, but
it's
there
not
are some alerts which can be like automated, which can be solved, automatically, like a run book. If this alert come, execute this script so that the alert resolves or the issue in the system get resolved. I'm not talking about that resolving all the alerts, but the alerts which can be resolved using any automated mechanism.
Sure. I mean, I think it's possible to build that in. If you use automation, you can build some of these in, using automation scripts. But, would this platform automatically heal the whole thing? No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything else? Okay, Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.